Hey, Allison Verhalen here, and I tried to go live to do this, and YouTube would not cooperate. So I don't know if that's a new thing on their end or if it was just being glitchy, and here we are. So I am pre-recording this and uploading it later to YouTube. So thank you so much for joining me for today's Marketing Monday. Today I am actually talking about a book called The Psychology of a Website. I hope you can see it. I did read the ebook, so you can't like get a good look at the cover. But you can buy it on Amazon. It's The Psychology of a Website by Matthew Coppola. So the full title is The Psychology of a Website: Mastering Cognitive Biases, Conversion Triggers, and Modern SEO to Achieve Massive Results. So I am currently working on my own book all about the psychology of marketing. So when I stumbled across that book, I was like, oh, yeah, clearly I need to read this. I loved it. It is such a good book. It's a really good introduction to the world of content marketing and SEO. It does focus on your website. So my book is going to focus on a few more things like social media, email, press releases, all those good things. So it's going to be a little more broad than this book. But this book does have a really good breakdown of what you need on your website, both from an SEO perspective. So Matthew Coppola, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, but he ran his own SEO agency for a number of years, and I think is still running his own SEO agency, and talked about some of the great results he got for his clients and some of the things that he would do right off the bat when he got a new client. It's like, all right, well, here's where we got to start. And talked about some of the awesome results he got for them. I do want to say that his experience is primarily in e-commerce. My experience is primarily in professional services. So there's a little bit of a difference there, especially when it comes to that final getting the money, right? Getting them to, I always say, click the buy button. He means literally click the buy button. I tend to mean it metaphorically because my clients tend to be like, well, they're not going to buy online. They're going to pick up the phone and call me. They're going to fill out a form and then we'll reach out to them. It's usually you have to have a conversation with them, at least one conversation before they're going to become a client. So that is my one. Well, okay, I have a couple caveats. That's my one caveat. My one main caveat, but for the most part, I would say most of what he's talking about here is applicable to professional service industries as well as to e-commerce. So that did not affect my enjoyment of the book or the fact that I was nodding along to most of what he said in here. So it was awesome. What else? My other caveat, so because SEO changes so quickly. This book is only 3 years old. It was written in the copyright is in 2021. So that's when it was published. And I already found some outdated information. Not super outdated. Most of it really is evergreen, but he does talk about Google's EAT standards, EAT, which stands for expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. He forgot, well, he didn't forget, he didn't know at the time, but since publishing this book, Google has added another E to that acronym. So now it's the EEAT standards. And that extra E stands for experience, which Coppola provides here, right? So what is your experience with this? Do you have real world experience, or are you just going off of what you read somewhere? Or saw somewhere or heard someone say once when you were at the bar, right? This other book I've been reading, it's fictional about this woman who's trying to become a surgeon, and on the side when women weren't supposed to be surgeons back in the Regency era, right? So she's kind of doing it on the sly and trying to get bodies illegally so she can operate on them. And someone asks why, and she's, don't you have all that in the textbooks? And she's like, you do not want someone operating on you who has only seen a drawing in a textbook. You need someone who has literally gotten their hands dirty and dug in around a body to see what goes where and what it looks like in real life, not just drawings. Same goes, so Google has that same theory, right? It's like, okay, you know the theory, but have you applied it? Have you seen this work in real life? Coppola, like I said, has a successful SEO agency, so he was able to provide, yes, I have this experience. Yes, this is what we did. This is what the result was. So awesome. Loved that. He also talked about colors, which I appreciated because most of this book, I didn't really learn anything. I was just able to say, yeah, no, that's great. And I got access to a bunch of studies. He does back up his information with studies, some of which I was aware of, some of which I was not. So that's always good. But then he got into the color of a website, colors to include, not really colors you should not include. I think there were one or two that was like, yeah, people generally don't like this color. They don't respond well to it. But he talked about why that is and some of the emotions that come up with certain colors, even though we don't know why, right? I had this experience when a friend of mine has red all over her logo and her website, and it's actually in the name of her brand, right? And got some feedback where someone was like, "Ooh, that's intense. I don't really like that." But the person couldn't articulate why they don't like it, right? It's because all of this is happening on a subconscious level. So getting all that information on the colors of a website and how to use them effectively, I found really useful. So let's get into some of the other stuff that he talked about. Building trust is another great one. Because you have to get people's trust if they're going to hand over their money, right? Especially for, again, my clients who are professional service providers. There's usually some very sensitive information they're dealing with for their clients. So that is something that you need to keep a lookout on. And find ways to build trust. So one is the bandwagon effect. Again, this is more of an e-commerce thing. If you've ever been shopping online and you click on something and you add it to your cart, and this banner pops up with a countdown clock saying you have this long and this many people have already bought this product and we only have so many left, right? So that does two things. First of all, it provides scarcity, but it also positions the product as one that is popular, it is desirable. If other people are buying it, it must be a great product, and therefore we should hop on this and get our copy, our whatever, before they run out. Social proof, this I will back this up 100% regardless of the industry you're in. This is the strategically placed UGC, which stands for user generated content. That is when someone else creates content saying, yes, this is awesome. Yes, this person is great. This company is great. This product service is awesome. This is the problem I had. This is what they did for me. And this was the result. You always want those throughout your content. Testimonials you can create yourself, or, take what, ideally you're taking what someone has said about you, creating a testimonial and putting it on your website. Ideally, you're not just making up testimonials, but people do that. They write testimonials for themselves and they put it up with a fake name and a stock photo, right? And who are we to know any different, whether that's a real testimonial or not? So the user generated content, you can get a video testimonial. This is why Google reviews are so popular, even though, there are ways around that. LinkedIn referrals as well and recommendations. It's because people have to go in and create it themselves and publish it themselves. You can't do that for your own company. So by seeing people who are really happy with your product and or service, and they're posting about it, that can go so much further towards convincing someone to work with you than anything you could say. Because everyone is going to take what you say with a grain of salt. But if they see that someone else is or was in the situation there and now and got a solution to that problem and had a really great experience with you, that is so much more effective. And then earning Google's trust. This goes back to the EAT standards, which are now the EEAT standards. But we often talk about earning people's trust. And yes, that's super important. But you also have to earn Google's trust, because Google knows that if they direct people to crappy content and misinformation and it bites them in the butt, they're not going to have a business anymore. So they work pretty hard to make sure that people are actually know what they're talking about before they direct people to that content. So you have to earn Google's trust. And then you also have to earn people's trust. So Google is getting better and better at identifying, what makes quality content, what makes someone trustworthy, what makes our users trust the people who are creating the content we are directing them towards. So it's not that you don't have to care. It's not like Google or the real users on your website. It's like you got to convince Google, and then you have to convince the real people who are on your website that yes, you're trustworthy. Yes, you know what you're talking about. And yes, they can trust you. Content marketing, he had a whole section in this book titled The Magic of Content Marketing. So he won me over as soon as I saw that. He didn't stop at talking about what an important role content plays in SEO. It's a very important role. I do want to mention that. And yes, he did cover that. He also talked about the importance of crafting your content into a compelling story. Because yes, he's an SEO professional, but this, at the end of the day, this book is all about the psychology of your website. How are you gonna get into people's heads and motivate them to take that next step in the buyer journey? And it all comes down to, well, it doesn't all come down to content, but content is the heavy lifting. And storytelling is a great way to keep people reading. You give them a bunch of facts and numbers and statistics, and they're either going to tune out or they're going to say, yeah, okay, that's great. And then they're going to click away and they're not going to remember it. But if you can provide the information you want them to have in a story, they're so much more likely to A, stay engaged and read the whole thing, and B, actually remember what you told them, because that doesn't always happen, right? So, but we are primed to engage with stories and to remember stories. Our brains work in stories. Most of us, our brains don't work in numbers and statistics. Some people do, minority of the population. Most of us, give us a good story, we're on board. So I love that he talked about that and talked about it in a really compelling way. And then he provided some SEO tips, including domain authority, which I'm going to quibble with because domain authority is not a real thing. Google has said it's not a real thing. It is something Moz made up to sell one of their tools that uses information not provided by Google. So that's my one quibble with this book. And then he went on to talk about the importance of backlinks, which are super important. And I am going to back up, no pun intended, I am going to back up everything he said there, because backlinks are super important to your website. Those are connected because backlinks are really what Moz uses to determine domain authority. And yes, that is one thing that Google looks at. It's not the only thing that Google looks at to determine, like, is this a trustworthy website? Is this a reliable source? Google looks at a bunch of different stuff. Moz's domain authority tool really only looks at backlinks. So they're just taking a little bit of the information and making grand assumptions about it. And Google's like, yeah, no, we're looking at a lot more than that. So, but backlinks are important. Do make sure you have high quality backlinks to your website. And last, but certainly not least, overcoming objection. You can do this on your website, right? And again, this is super important for e-commerce because you want people to buy on your website without a conversation where you can talk them out of their objections, right? But I would argue that even for professional service providers, it's also super important to overcome objections right there on the website so that they're going to be more likely to take that next step to call you. Then you don't have to go through all those things in the sales conversation with them because they already went through it on the website. They're already convinced that, okay, these are not objections anymore. I want to move forward. So it's a time saver. And again, it makes it more likely that they're actually going to reach out to you instead of allowing them to talk themselves out of it. So don't hide from, oh, people don't want to work with me because, or people don't like people in my industry, right? For these reasons, right? People don't like SEO people because they've been screwed over by SEO people. Well, okay, yeah, it's not going to help you to not address the fact that there are snake oil salesmen out there in the world of SEO. What you want to do is address it and say, here are the things you need to look out for. And here's why I'm not a snake oil salesman. Here's how you can tell, right? So by addressing those objections, you, again, earn their trust. It all comes back to earning their trust. And again, lead them to that next step in the buyer journey. So that is it. That is just a snapshot. This book covered a lot more. But it was also super accessible. It was, I mean, obviously I'm an SEO professional. I've gotten into the weeds with SEO. This book does not get into the weeds. It's more of kind of a general overview of this is what you need on your website. This is why. This is how it works. This is how the brain works. This is why we react certain ways to certain things. Super accessible, super easy to read. I absolutely recommend it to anyone who is new to the world of SEO, content marketing, having a website. So that is it. That is everything that I have for you today. And again, this book is on Amazon, The Psychology of a Website by Matthew Capala, C-A-P-A-L-A. That's it. Have a great week and happy blogging, everyone.